First, where are you in the world?
I'm in Richmond, Virginia, sitting at home.
Okay, so cool.
And you're in the Netherlands.
Yes, in a town just outside of Amsterdam.
Very nice. I love that part of the world. It's very beautiful. People have been living on top of each other for a long time, so there's a sense of civility. While humans can be discussing greedy creatures, there's a sense of civility that comes from living on top of each other for centuries.
Sure, and I don't know. I'm sure it's different because me being Dutch, I have a whole different perspective of the country than you would have.
Of course.
Same thing in terms of how I think of America, which is an interesting thing to kind of lead us into the album, perhaps.
Sure.
Here's my thing. You mentioned the word greed just now. Some
I mentioned the word. What word did I mention? I'm sorry. There's a bit of an echo, and I couldn't.
You mentioned the word greed. Mentioned the word greed just now, and there's some reference to that on the record. So, and this might be a terrible question, but how would you describe kind of the state of America at the moment?
Oh wow, we're gonna go there, huh? Right now. Let me ask first. Should
Sure.
I watch my language? I'm sure not.
No. You talk as freely as you like.
Very good. We're fucked. The national leadership is a murderous sociopath, and it's, I think, glaringly obvious when you know that there's a deadly virus going around, yet you have rallies where you bring people together in a closed area. The reason that we are doing these online performances is because it would be irresponsible to gather people like that. So we are trying to push forward as best we can, whereas the president of the fucking country is killing people. He's murdering people.
And this being an election, I don't want to go into politics too much because obviously we have music to talk to. But I'm interested. I have a degree in American studies, so I'm somewhat interested in this. So this being an election year, okay, and especially as you mentioned, weird as the world is now, with everything having to be online, and how do you see kind of the upcoming election year? Do you think it will matter?
I don't know. I remember back when George Bush was elected a second time, that's when I realized that the bad guys sometimes win important things. And then I remember shortly before Trump was elected, I was talking with my parents, and they're like, there's no way he's getting elected. Don't worry. And I was like, I kind of remember this from before. Like, he could win. And he did. So what's going to happen was your question. Regardless of the outcome of the election, leading up to it, I think it's just going to get more and more chaotic. There's going to be more violence stoked by the president. If he loses, he will contend the election and try and tie it up in court. He may try to incite his followers to violence to keep him in office somehow. I really have no idea what's going to happen. It's crazy times we're living in, and people are very aggravated and divided.
Sure. And now, when you have an album that kind of deals with a lot of these things that we've just talked about, I imagine that's a gradual thing. It's not just, hey, we're going to set out and write an album about these things. Is it something that kind of bubbles up as the writing process goes along?
Well, Randy is responsible for the lyrical themes, but we have always kind of focused on the dark side of humanity. Sometimes calling out specific situations and people. In doing so, sometimes being more subtle. I think that this record, he did an amazing job kind of writing that line where, in certain songs exactly who he's talking about, but it's still open enough to interpretation that you could apply it to different situations in your own life and helping you deal with or relate to being alive.
So when kind of the process started for this record, I don't know exactly when this was. I imagine around 2016, 17.
We tried to start writing this record. We tried to get off the road to do this, and Slayer kept asking us to go out and do some more shows with them. So it kept getting pushed back and getting pushed back. Wow, now that we're through this end of the ringer, it would take me a second to try and figure out when we actually did all this work. But we started, the record was recorded before the end of the year.
Okay.
So we spent, it was from last summer, a few months going into the studio, and then a bunch of mixing, and then the release got pushed back. But yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned Slayer asking you on the road, because obviously that's a great honor. You get to tour, and especially in light of where we are now, do you miss being on the road?
Do I miss being on the road? We have been a band for a number of years, and being on the road has become very normal in some regard. And it's a bizarre life when things are going normally, because at least in my case, I bounce from home life to work life. And my home life, I'm a dad. I got 2 young kids, up early, in bed early, and then I go to work, and it's a completely different thing. And the transition between the two can be difficult, and it's anxiety ridden. But at this point, man, I want to get out on the road so badly. I just miss everything about it. Even the stuff that's terrible, I will be looking at with different eyes once this all goes back to being able to tour.
Because this being this whole lockdown and everything that's going on, being somewhat of a moment of reflection, did it take you back to kind of why you got into music and that idea of being a touring musician?
No, I don't think anything that deep happened. Okay. I think it was more just a lament for the way things were, and not being able to work, and watching what looks like the world crumbling with not just this pandemic, but politics are terrible, and then the climate change that's going on, the wildfires raging in California, Oregon, and Washington, and the storms that are coming with more frequency and stronger to the Gulf Coast and the East Coast of the U.S. It is crazy times, man.
It's very, the uncertainty of it all is, I think, what makes it very, very hard to get your head around.
I agree. And I think one of the great things about doing these live performances that we're doing, at least for me, was I was able to write on a calendar, like something definitive that's going to happen, and it's a positive thing. And this is such a good feeling to do that, rather than the uncertainty of, well, what's going to happen next month?
And you're talking about the 2 live streams you're going to do. I think it's next week and the week after, where you're going to play the new album in full. And then I think Ashes of the Wake on the second night. Or is it the other night?
No, you're right. We're going to do the first record. It is this Friday. And then the following Friday, we're going to do Ashes of the Wake in its entirety. And both records, when we play them, we're going to do a few songs at the end, just to kind of throw some interesting tunes out there.
And now, will this be the first time that you kind of play any of the songs of the new record?
No, we had played Checkmate. We did one show this year in February, Valentine's Day in Chicago at the House of Vans, and we played Checkmate at that show, which was the first time we played that song or anything off the new record live. So, in a lot of this will be the first time we have performed those songs together on a stage. Which you never know how it's going to go, because until you get on stage and start playing the songs, like, I don't practice headbanging. I don't practice, being in the character of playing bass and letting the music take over and all the nonsense that goes into playing music. You never really know how that's going to go until you're there. So,
yeah, and especially because the audience thing, right? Because I don't know how is it just purely online, or will there be people kind of peppered into?
Purely online. The only people there will be film crew and our technicians.
Because you've been playing shows for most of your life. So have you ever played a show before where there weren't people to watch?
We played shows before where there weren't many people, and we played shows before where there were antagonistic people watching. Never played to essentially an empty room, and that's it's hopefully the lights are bright and in our face, and you can't tell. It stinks in a lot of ways, just because the live performance and performing music and everything that goes into that has a lot to do with doing this for people, and there being like it sounds cheesy to say it, but an exchange of energy that, like, it's maybe it's tapping into some bit of the human condition that is, which is why people are so into it. It'll be interesting to see how that goes without that element there, but the cameras are there, and looking at the cameras, you can't help but think of all the eyes that are watching through those lenses.
Sure. One thing I find interesting then is because when you write music, and I suppose, I'm not sure if this is more true for a rhythm section than other members of the band, but you do want people to move in essence to kind of the sounds that you're making. What is your approach to making music in that sense? Do you need an audience in order to make music? Do you need kind of?
No, I don't think the creation of it you do. I think when you're creating, I think it's more personal. It's what affects you, what evokes some sort of reaction from yourself, and then you develop that and see where it goes, and then it's a completely different step, and the music almost takes on a whole new life once it's for live performance, as opposed to an unfinished block being chiseled away at.
When you were in the process of making the record, then were there songs that stuck out that you thought, well, this would work live, or this would be really cool to do live?
Well, there's certainly, yes, absolutely. The songs with like the super heavy breakdowns, like, holy shit, people are going to lose teeth on this song. So when we write, there is an awareness of them eventually being live, but it's not necessarily a focusing element to the writing at that point. But it is obvious sometimes when like riffs are super heavy that you can just feel it as the performer, that like, oh, people are going to love this part.
And well, the reason why I ask is I'm kind of trying to get into the way you write songs, because you start with a riff, and then I suppose the song gets fleshed out, and then Randy comes in with the lyrics. Is that kind of in essence how
the way it works for us is that Mark and Willie will sit at home and do writings that they then bring to us as a group, and we all kind of kick it around. That has progressed over the years to where these guys are bringing in more complete songs, to where now, like, they'll bring in entire songs now with all parts figured out, and then we'll learn them and then talk about the BPMs, or maybe does that need a stronger chorus, or does that part really work, or what if we took that part from another song that you were working on that we kind of ditched the song and put that part in here because that part was great. So that's what happens in the pre-production, and we all learn it and create the tempo maps and the files that will then go in the studio to put down our parts on. And
well, let's try and get into the song a little bit deeper then. Which one of the songs, in your opinion, improved the most from kind of what was brought in?
What song improved the most? The thing is, you can't attach too hard to the songs early on because they're so fluid. They're so fluid. But this is kind of a cheater answer your question, but the song "Resurrection Man" was not written beforehand, and that one was actually written while we all stood there going, "Hey, we need." Josh Wilbur actually said to us, "Hey, on this collection of songs we're putting together, I really feel like we're missing a character that has these elements. Let's write a song right now that has those elements." So we as a group sat there and threw riffs together and arrangements. And
as a band, and you've been doing this for a while, that must be a great kind of confidence. I don't know if confidence boost is the right word, but the fact that you can pull that off in a couple hours or a couple days and get a song like that. What does that tell you about the band?
I'll be very humble about this, and really, Mark and Willie are phenomenal songwriters. Without those guys in the band, this would be a very different band. But yes, that is, to have written that song as quickly as it came together, and have so many people like, "Oh my God, I love that song. That's like the best song on the record." I'm like, "Oh, we threw that thing together real quick. It is a cool song. I dig it." But it's interesting how there's really no relation to how the song was created to how it ends up being digested.
Right. Do you, and I think I know the answer, but do you as a band worry about what people or how people perceive the music that you make?
No.
Right.
We were talking about earlier, like when it first started getting written, it's about, does it evoke a response from you? And we never intended to be successful. We just wanted to write stuff that we were like excited to go to rehearsal to play, and then maybe we could play a party and play the 30 minutes of music we had written. When we signed to a major label, they kind of confessed to us, they don't really know why you guys are selling records, so we're not going to tell you what to do. Just keep doing what you're doing. So no, we don't really care what people think about it. I mean, it is nice that people like what we do and we've made a career out of it. But that is certainly not our goal in what we're doing. It's really about creating music that we love to make. And we're lucky enough that we have this insanely fun job to create music and hopefully tour again.
Right. Well, yeah, 2020, right? Because is that now the plan? Is everything pushed?
Everything's pushed to 2021 at this point. Okay. And that's, fingers crossed there's a safe, effective vaccine that is distributed throughout the world.
Listen, yeah, I try to be hopeful. It's,
I mean, what else you got?
Exactly. And then if you look at Ashes of the Wake, which you will play as well in its entirety, and you just mentioned kind of why you make music. How do you look back at that record in terms of kind of where it stands within what you've made over the years?
It was an interesting. It's interesting going back and rehearsing that record, because the first half of the record we played those songs quite a bit over the years in our sets. The second half, some of them, when the record came out, we sat and looked at each other and said, "Yeah, we're never going to play this live." Like Ashes of the Wake with all the guest solos, we're never going to play that live. And here we are, 16 years later, like, shit, how are we going to pull this off? Okay, let's do this. But it's been really fun because I go back to all these riffs that I haven't played, haven't tried to play or tried to remember in a long time. And the muscle memory kicks in. But, I've gotten a little better at my instrument since then. So like, I know better ways to play instead of going, blah, 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 I can, blah, blah, blah. So like, I have to relearn the song and then learn it an appropriate way to play it. It's been fun, man. It's been a labor of love in a lot of ways, because it's kind of like looking at old pictures, going back to these old songs and relearning these old riffs that, oh yeah, that riff is cool as shit. I forgot about that riff.
As a band, do you, and I also, I keep asking questions I think I know the answer to, but do you as a band look back a lot at what you've done, or is it more of a kind of looking forward as where to evolve to next?
It's definitely looking forward. We're, every record we do, the goal is to do better than we had done the last time. And I feel like we've done that. It's always looking forward. It's to be honest, like going back to Ashes of the Wake, some of those songs I hadn't listened to in a decade at least. So, we're definitely a forward-looking band.
And then finally, you mentioned Randy takes care of most of the lyrics, but the entire band has, I suppose, opinions about these kind of subjects and stuff. So, first, do you discuss? Does Randy discuss them with the band? Do you kind of?
Yeah. At points, there's not like a meeting. Okay, today's a lyric meeting. Everybody be here at 10:30, sitting around a big round table. We're going to discuss these lyrics. But it comes up in conversation. If I hear something I think is interesting, or maybe I have a question about the lyric, or maybe the where it comes from, I've definitely asked him, and we'll ask him, "Hey, and most of the time he's like, no, that's not it." But I think a few times I've been dead on, and he just says, no, that's not it.
Which song on the record were you most impressed by then, in terms of its themes?
Well, I can't think of what song this is from, but I remember his lyric, "Pure Voodoo Economic Hell." And I think before that, he's talking about a horse for Baron Samadhi. I thought that was beautiful.
No, I was just looking at which one.
Man, that's Resurrection Man.
Yeah, he mentions the voodoo.
A Loa coming and riding a human, and then taking that into talking about voodoo economics, which is some political stuff. I don't know. I think he did an amazing job on this record. But that, as you asked me that question, that's the first lyrics that bubble into my head.
It's interesting then, because that's the one you kind of created on the spot then, right?
Well, that said, the music was created on the spot. When Randy's crafting lyrics, he's not just sitting there waiting for us to play and be like, okay. Blah, blah, blah. No, he sits down and very purposefully writes, edits, and he takes great care in crafting the words that he screams.
And then kind of to round off this interview, I want to go into the first song of the record, Memento Mori. Because that's kind of, even though it also touches upon kind of some of the horrors in the world, it's kind of the message, I suppose, is more, well, also remind ourselves of the good things in the world and to live life and not just get bogged down with
Sure. I mean,
too much information.
Or you could take that and twist it around any way you wanted.
Fair enough.
But I think that's along the lines of the intent of those lyrics.
Well, let me ask it in this way then. How do you perceive kind of, because we mentioned earlier on kind of the state of the world and how difficult things are at the moment. Are you hopeful in a sense? And as this song kind of indicates, do you go to certain places to kind of get out of that information overload?
Well, let's consider that this all started in March. I've been since the middle of March pretty much quarantining or isolating as much as possible. Absolutely, there have been dark times, man. And times where it didn't seem hopeful at all, and there's times where it's like, oh, okay, come on, this is good news. Something good's going to happen. At this point, just trying to focus on the good stuff going on and not get bogged down in the bad, because even the little bad stuff that would be going on normally just become a huge headache under these conditions. And it's easy to get caught up in your struggles and get pulled down by them.
Final question now, what is one thing you do to get away from it, aside from music?
I have a motorcycle. Okay. And it goes really fast. Okay. And I love getting on my bike and rolling out into the countryside.
This sounds. I'm actually at the moment I'm taking lessons to ride motorcycles. So
right on, man.
Maybe,
be careful.
Maybe in a couple of months I can do the same and clear my head.
Right on. We'll keep the rubber side down, as they say.
All right, John. Thank you very much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Be safe, and God, I hope we get to see you guys over in the Netherlands very soon. Get back to Bar 20. You familiar with Bar 20? Tiny little bar.
In Amsterdam?
-020. Oh yeah.
Oh no, I've come to Amsterdam too late. I was already out of my kind of clubbing and going to bars type of phase.
I know. Well, it's not the time to socialize. It's not the time to socialize, but you're in a very boring stage of your life.
Yeah, I'm in a very
well. Spice it up a little bit. Spice it up a little bit. I've been to Bar 20 or BR-020. I'm not sure how they call it, but an amazing place. I had an amazing time, and I got to send a shout out to the fine folks there.
Excellent. All right, John. Have a good one.
Eco to the tres.
Right.
Later on, man.
Bye-bye.